You think you're choosing them. But the truth is, something older is choosing for you. Something buried. Why you keep falling for the same kind of person, just wearing a different face? Why do your relationships start with fire and end in familiar ruin? You call it bad luck, or worse, bad timing. But deep down, there's a gnawing sense that it's not the world doing this to you. It's you. It's always been you. And that's where the truth begins to hurt. Because you've mistaken repetition for romance. You've mistaken emotional chaos for chemistry. And every time you chase the familiar, you abandon the very part of you that longs to be seen. You say you want love, but your subconscious wants something else to replay the wound, to recreate the stage of your first emotional pain, so that this time you might master it, so that maybe, just maybe they'll stay. Freud called this the repetition compulsion. It's the most tragic trick your unconscious ever plays on you. You think you're starting a new chapter, but you're just repeating the prologue with someone new. That person you can't stop thinking about, the one who triggers your anxiety, who makes you feel not quite enough, not quite safe. They don't come from the future. They come from your past. You're not falling in love. You're falling into a memory. And here's where it gets deeper. Because the people you choose aren't chosen randomly. You're drawn to the one who can scratch the itch of your unresolved childhood wound. Maybe you had earned love growing up. Maybe love was inconsistent, too close, then too distant. So now, you find yourself chasing the emotionally unavailable. Try to be enough for someone who can never give you what you need. Not because you're broken, but because your subconscious is trying to fix the past by replaying it. Think about it. That one person who feels like home, why do they also feel like a storm? Why do you feel seen and invisible at the same time? It's because you were trained to confuse survival with affection. When a parent's love was conditional, you learned to equate anxiety with desire. And now, peace feels boring. Stability feels suspicious. You swipe past the people who would actually love you because they don't activate the wound. They don't make you fight for it. And if love doesn't hurt a little, your inner child thinks it isn't real. This is how the pattern becomes a prison. You chase intensity over intimacy. You run from those who see you clearly and run toward those who mirror your earliest pain. And the worst part, you call it destiny. You write poetry about it. You romanticize your suffering because part of you still believes if you love them enough, they'll finally love you the way you always needed. But that's not love. That's bargaining with a ghost. Let that land. You are not in love. You are in reenactment. And this isn't just theory. There's a structure to it. In psychoanalysis, this is called object relations. The idea that your early caregivers become internal objects, emotional templates, through which you interpret every relationship. If your template is chaotic, unsafe, or conditional, you'll subconsciously seek out people who fit that mold. Not because you want to suffer, but because it feels like home. Because your nervous system only relaxes in what it recognizes, even if what it recognizes is pain. So the real question isn't, why do I always choose the wrong person? The real question is, what version of love does my nervous system believe is safe? What kind of emotional landscape do you associate with connection? Is it softness, safety, and reciprocity? Or is it tension, longing, and unpredictability? Because here's the hard truth. Until you make your inner world safe, your outer world will reflect your wounds. You'll keep meeting versions of the same person until you confront the part of you that keeps inviting them in. And no, this isn't about blaming yourself. It's about reclaiming your power. Because when you finally begin to see the pattern, you stop confusing chemistry with destiny. You stop calling it love when it's actually anxiety. And for the first time, you give yourself permission to walk away. Not because you're bitter, but because you're free. That freedom doesn't come from deleting contacts or setting rules. It comes from turning inward, from sitting with the raw ache of the past and saying, I see you now. You don't have to keep screaming through my choices. I'll take it from here. Because healing doesn't mean never falling again. It means falling in a new direction. But just recognizing the pattern isn't enough. Because even after you understand it, after you name the wound, trace the origins, and swear to never fall for that again, something inside still pulls you back. That magnetic ache, that chemical craving, Like some part of you is addicted not to the person, but to the emotional roller coaster they provide. It's not a lack of willpower. It's the emotional blueprint still running the show. And that's where Jung takes us deeper into the unconscious terrain of your shadow. Because it's not just your inner child who chooses. It's the disowned parts of you, the ones you buried to survive, the rage you were never allowed to express, the neediness you were shamed for, the fear of abandonment you masked with perfection. You call it independence now. You wear strength like armor. But underneath, your shadow still aches to be accepted. And so, unconsciously, you're drawn to the very person who will trigger that ache, so that maybe, finally, you'll face it. You attract your shadow's mirror. And that mirror doesn't show up in peace. It shows up in conflict, in lovers who neglect you, in partners who manipulate you, in relationships that start with dopamine and end in devastation. Not because you deserve pain, but because your psyche is trying to make you whole. And wholeness begins when you reclaim what you rejected. So what does that look like? It means asking harder questions. Not just why did they hurt me, but what part of me needed their chaos to feel alive? Not why did they leave, but what did I abandon in myself the moment I met them? Because here's the paradox. You chase what's familiar, even when what's familiar is wounding you. And until you embrace the part of you that believes love must be earned, you will keep chasing people who make you prove it. You'll keep auditioning for affection instead of receiving it. You'll keep confusing your trauma response with your intuition. But the moment you slow down, the moment you stop chasing and start listening, something shifts. You begin to notice how quickly your nervous system lights up around the emotionally distant. How your stomach drops when someone texts back too fast. How you call it boring when someone offers consistent affection. That's not preference. That's conditioning. You've been taught that love is earned through performance. That safety is suspicious. That desire must come with danger. And so real love, quiet, steady, reciprocal, feels foreign, almost repulsive, like your system doesn't know what to do with it. But here's where the healing begins. You don't override that discomfort. You sit with it. You study it. You ask it where it came from, because that discomfort is the gateway to reprogramming. Not by forcing yourself to love someone nice, but by gently creating safety inside you first. By becoming the presence you've always searched for in others. That's where psychoanalysis becomes liberation, not just analysis. Because Freud taught us to dig, to unearth the roots. But Jung taught us to integrate, to stop running from the shadows and start listening to them. The jealousy, the fear, the shame, they're not enemies. They're messengers. They're the parts of you that were never loved out loud. And you cannot receive in others what you refuse to give yourself. So when you find yourself attracted to someone who makes you anxious, pause. Ask, what version of me is choosing right now? Is it my adult self, or the wounded child trying to rewrite the ending? Am I drawn to this person because they're safe, or because they feel like the danger I've survived before? Because once you learn to differentiate safety from sedation, your entire love life transforms. You'll stop interpreting mixed signals as romantic tension. You'll stop needing to prove your worth to people who don't see it. You'll begin to tolerate the boredom of peace until it feels like serenity. And slowly, what once pulled you toward pain will start to lose its grip. And maybe for the first time, you'll meet someone who doesn't set your nervous system on fire. Someone whose presence feels like calm instead of chaos. And at first, you might not feel the usual spark. It might feel flat, even dull. But if you stay, if you breathe through the silence, you'll realize something stunning. This isn't the absence of chemistry. It's the absence of trauma. You're not bored. You're just unfamiliar with not suffering. And in that space, you begin to write a new story. Not driven by compulsion, not choreographed by your wounds, but chosen freely. Not because you need to fix anyone, but because you finally chose yourself. And still, even with this awareness, there will be moments you slip. Moments you catch yourself scanning a room for someone to fix, or chasing the thrill of being chosen. There will be days when your loneliness whispers that your standards are too much. Nights when the silence echoes louder than any toxic argument ever did. And you'll be tempted to go back, to text them, to reopen a door you already closed. Not because you forgot who they were, but because part of you forgets who you become. That's how trauma works. It doesn't erase your growth. It just distorts your memory. You'll start to romanticize the red flags. You'll tell yourself it wasn't that bad. You'll replay only the highs and mute the collapses. Because your mind prefers the pain it understands over the peace it hasn't earned yet. But you don't need to earn peace. You need to allow it. And this is where psychoanalysis becomes a rebellion. Because in a world that profits from your self-abandonment, choosing to love yourself radically, consciously, patiently is a revolutionary act. It's not glamorous. It won't always be Instagrammable. It won't always feel strong. Sometimes it looks like crying alone instead of calling someone who broke you. Sometimes it looks like blocking the number before your nervous system can argue with your wisdom. Sometimes it's waking up and choosing again to stay on your own side. Because real healing is not linear. It's layered. It's messy. Some days, you'll feel like you've unlocked the universe. And the next, you'll be curled up in bed wondering if you're lovable at all. That doesn't mean you've failed. It means you're in it. You're doing the work your parents were too scared to do. You're facing ghosts they passed down and calling them by name. And eventually, you'll notice the shift. You'll stop falling for potential and start recognizing patterns. You'll stop craving intensity and start trusting consistency. You'll stop blaming yourself for being too much and start honoring your sensitivity as sacred. You'll build friendships that mirror your healing. You'll build rituals that ground your worth. You'll stop waiting for someone to save you and realize you were the one holding the pen all along. That's what Freud meant when he said, unexpressed emotions will never die. They are buried alive and will come forth later in uglier ways. And that's what Jung deepened when he reminded us that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But you cannot become if you are constantly abandoning. And maybe that's the greatest shift you'll make. Not choosing better partners, but choosing from a better place inside you. Not waiting for someone to love your scars, but holding them with both hands and saying, I see you. How about you now? Because the question was never, why do I always choose the wrong person? The real question was, what part of me still believes that's all I deserve? And when you stop asking the world to answer that for you, when you stop outsourcing your worth to broken mirrors, you become dangerous in the most beautiful way. Not because you're untouchable, but because you are finally whole. So if you're in that place now, raw, confused, healing, don't rush out of it. Sit with it. Let it burn through the illusions. Let untangle the fantasy. Let it introduce you to the parts of yourself you buried beneath someone else's approval. And when you're ready, choose love. But this time, let's start with you.